Intro, take 3. And welcome back to Go Falcon with Hobbies. I'm Kyle, your host and creator of this channel. And I got a motor and transmission sitting in the truck right now. Yeah, it's actually in there. It's not attached to anything, but it's floating in there. Stick around. 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 Stay tuned. However you want to, perceive it, I would ask you to stay and enjoy this video while you watch me suffer and overcomplicate such a simple task of swinging this in and everything that's led up to this point. Words. It'd be better if I just write a script before I start recording and whatnot and just get my ideas in order and then completely ignore the script. Yeah, let's do that. Right now, I have the adapter plate for my small block Ford to 4L60E transmission. Transmission bell housing. Last episode, mentioned, kind of saw it in passing. You didn't see the actual work of me pressing these studs in, but they got pressed in. Here they are. Dowel pins are kind of secure. I need to Loctite those before I forget. But in anticipation or in preparation to put this in the engine bay, kind of mock everything up. Hopefully that's what this episode entails. I went ahead and did a rough outline. Well, actually, from here it really doesn't look too bad. But I did an outline on the plate itself of where I need to go ahead and trim to start, getting things fit. Because there ain't no reason to have these wings up here like this for the truck. But how am I going to cut that, you may ask? It's 1/4-inch thick aluminum. Very soft metal to work with. If I had a vertical bandsaw, that would be ideal. I'm currently at my place of employment and we do not have a vertical bandsaw. We have the traditional, horizontal one that just cuts like a, bar stock, which I think up to 10 inches, maybe? I don't know. It's tucked away over there in the corner anyway. But again, it's not suitable to do this job. So I was racking my brain on how I was going to do this. Do I use a death wheel and just have all sorts of jagged cuts? Or take a Sawzall to it, which actually probably would work, but a Sawzall is very aggressive demolition tool. So what I'm going to do is I went to the local big box hardware store and I picked me up there's a sticker on it so you can't see it. You probably still can't see this from the perspective you're at, but I bought me a variable speed jigsaw, DeWalt brand, because that's what they had that I knew I could trust. And so we are going to utilize this, some fancy metal jigsaw blades. I'm going to clamp this to the table so that way I have something solid to work against, because the vibrations I know are going to be horrendous on this. And we're going to lop these corners off. And then after saying this, it's probably going to be a time lapse, me doing it, showing it to you, yada, yada, yada. Who cares? Anyway, let's get to work. As soon as I figure out how to open up a cardboard box. There we go. Just get that out of the way. I really need to start carrying some side cutters with me. I'm going to have to open up a lot of... Wow. Actually, that's a... Aha, I did allow enough clearance. Awesome. Sometimes you get lucky. Blind squirrel finds a nut every now and then, don't it? And let's plug this one in. I don't like the way that one's fitting. That's better. I think that's going to work. Now let's see. Did I drop my safety glasses somewhere? Probably. They might accidentally be in the. There they are. They were on. Let's see. Let's check the camera angle. Get you in a little bit closer. Maybe. Yeah. I think we can work with that. Gloves. Earplugs. Some lubricant. Ta-da! Now I have a couple more pieces of aluminum I can either learn to or practice welding with or something else, but that is a much more natural shape for a bell housing end. So, and that's looking pretty darn decent. One thing that is driving me nuts though is, honestly, it doesn't matter. No, I'll keep my mouth shut. But it's just something I noticed. For as much as you paid, or as I paid for this, piece of aluminum with precision marked holes on it, you figured the aluminum would be dead nut square, but it's not. It's a little bit cattywampus, I think. It's like a eighth or a quarter inch variance, measuring side to side, up and down. But the holes are the only things that matter, and they do line up right. So that's the reason why it's only a rough cut, and then you do your final fitting and whatnot once you get it in the engine bay. Or at least that's what I'm thinking, and that's the plan for now. So that'll be all for this evening, and I will see y'all tomorrow morning. Okay. The following day was a chaotic mess. Went to the shop, had to run to the hardware store. That's pretty much the theme of my weekend at this point, was running to the hardware store, getting little things, getting hardware, getting bolts. I was going to work on the steering column because I didn't have everything I needed to put the engine in bay. Then it turned out I didn't have everything I needed to put the steering column in place. And it was just a mess. So what you see me doing is I'm back at work on. I'm back at my place of employment and found some bar stock in the scrap bin, and I'm using the lathe to turn it down to make me a solid bushing for the motor mounts, and get rid of those little flimsy rubber pieces and that little. Anyway, I didn't like how everything was fitting up. So I decided, yes, I will go ahead and make some solid motor bushings. And not only that, it gives me time to practice on the lathe and whatnot, because it's a tool that I have access to and I'm trying to get better at it. Uh, you My apologies for the lighting balance on this little clip here. I didn't realize the glare from the sun hitting the concrete was that extreme. But anyway, yeah, I'm just turning down some stock, drill it out, which is funny. I work in an industrial environment. You'd figured would have uh, real big drill bits and whatnot uh, for drilling out stock or holes or things like that.
and I couldn't find any, which is funny because that same day I bought drill bits for the house or for at the shop that would have been perfect for this. I just didn't have them. So I ended up just, undersizing it a little bit, quite a bit actually, and was just how should I say this? Yeah, basically drilled it undersized so that way I could press the bushing in, get the bushing, or yeah, drill it undersized, cut the bushings to length, which is what I'm doing here in this little clip. Got a part off wheel and whatnot, and you can see all sorts of mistakes I've made because again I'm not a expert at this at all. Uh, I just watch a lot of YouTube videos, think I can copy what some of the professionals do, but it works for what I need. Uh, but yeah, back to the drill bits and whatnot. I bought some that day that I would need, and but what I do is I press them in into the actual motor side mounts, and when I get back to the shop, I just drill them out to size. But they fit a lot better with very little slop in the bolt pin or the bolt, so that way it actually maintains rigidity.
Ran into my first issue, which ain't no biggie, but if anybody's watching this and might do the exact same idiotic thing that I'm doing, this is your dowel pin that comes with the kit that aligns the plate to the transmission. This is the dowel pin that's already in the block that aligns the plate to the block. You can see it's kind of missing on this side. But it's not that big of an issue because I can actually drive this in. I think I can drive this in a bit further. So that way it lines up like it's supposed to. And I got some more dowel pins in my toolbox that I'm going to use because I got to put one in here. So the plate may actually have to come back off for a minute while I get this situated. One step forward, two steps back. Now, I might just leave the microphone on. Who knows? I might say something inspiring. Doubt it. OSHA does not approve. Hammer. Let's see. Hmm. Okay. There's that. What does it look like on the transmission case? Am I going to have enough clearance? Nope. Awesome. Awesome sauce. All right, so I'm going to have to figure something else out on that. The fuzzies on the microphone don't feel good going up your nose. Should have took a measurement to see how much I actually need to. All right, let's see if I can get these out. It's probably not the best form. And it just gets really tight in there. Awesome. Now let's see if I can get this other one out. Fun. It's gonna hurt my finger doing it like that. Think. That thing is galled up to all heaven. Huh. Think I'm going to do is ow. Hard head area. Yeah. Do I want to be constructive or deconstructive? I don't have a die grinder. If I have to go into town to get me another freaking tool or more hardware, honestly, that's what it's looking like. It's like, pocket scale, pocket scale. Where's my pocket scale? Ha! It's a good thing I reviewed footage last night. I actually found one. That is About 420, 430. This is 1/4 inch, so that's 250. Actually, looking at it, it's closer to 270. All right, I'm going to pause. I want to get somebody else's opinion on this. All right, after trip 9,768 to town to get hardware tools that I don't currently have in shop, got me a little die grinder, which of course ain't going to be the best setup because this was the El Cheapo at the local tractor place. Yeah, Tractor Supply. We all know what I'm talking about. It's Tractor Supply. But I'm going to, let me spin this around and I'll probably move y'all to get y'all closer. Okay, there's that. Don't get motion sickness on me. Nice and slowly. Nice and slow. Hello. Okay. Focus. Alrighty. This is the dowel pin button that came with the kit that threads into the plate and aligns to the transmission. This is the dowel pin that's in the block and helps register on said adapter plate. Sharky. What, Sharky? Okay, back to what I was saying. Here is dowel pin for the block going through the adapter plate. Now the transmission butts up against the plate itself. So this is sticking up too far. And instead of worrying about, is my microphone even on? Oh, batteries are about to die. This is going to be interesting. But essentially, I got to do some clearancing so that way to allow these dowel pins clearance into, sorry, Sharky. Here. You can see I got it already marked. Nice little black mark there. And on the other side, only got a little bit there. Got the cheap die grinder from Tractor Supply. And of course, there was no burr bits. They only had stones. So I'm going to do with what I can and hopefully get this plate and everything situation done. Probably won't record all that because it is noisy and my microphone's about to die. No, I might do time. Who cares?
All right. One of the reasons why I brought up the stone situation for that little air tool, the die grinder thing, is grinding or doing anything to aluminum with a stone. You can kind of catch glimpses of it in this time lapse, but aluminum clogs up the stones. It doesn't abrade away pretty at all. It doesn't shed away. It doesn't stay away from the bit. It clogs up the stone because of the speed and everything associated with it. There's ways to circumvent that, but for the most part, for most general purpose applications, you don't use a stone for cleaning aluminum or for grinding away vast amounts of aluminum. Uh, but yeah, that's all I wanted to bring out on that. That and I pretty much burned up every stone that came in that little $30 kit. But after a little bit of finesse, and I came back with some actual burr bits. Did manage to buy some actual burr bits, and I cleaned up those holes just a little bit more. Didn't take 30 seconds. It took longer to set up the tool than it did to actually clean the holes out. Now, the moment of truth, putting everything together. I didn't record mounting the plate to the transmission to the engine and yada yada yada, all that nonsense. Mostly because I forgot to hit record. I had the camera pointed straight at it. I just completely forgot to hit record. And somehow, some miraculous stroke of luck that I'm not entirely sure how it was possible. I'm still scratching my head on it. It took me, which you can see me dancing around a lot too, just looking at things, checking clearances. It took me 40 minutes to swing this motor in and set it down on some cribbing to kind of mock it up in place by myself. Which honestly, if I was to do it all over again, I would make sure I had some help. Because one of the scariest things was you can see the dive angle of the transmission. I was using ratchet straps to kind of help pick everything up, so that way I can actually get on due to the limit of the hydraulic ram. I wanted to kind of lessen the height I had to use and trying to explain this in a way that actually makes sense. But I was using ratchet straps to pull on the end of the tailstock on the transmission, so that way it could help level it out when I swung it over. And then I had to go and get me a second ratchet strap to catch whenever I released the first ratchet strap, so that way I could start nosing everything back down. And then I was able to use the ratchet straps to kind of help pitch things in place. And then once I got to about this point, I was able to move a jack around and use the jack to properly lift up the transmission and kind of help sit everything in place. I don't think I did too terrible at it. Again, like I said, it's always better if you have help. And whenever I do this for real, with the motor after it gets machined and the new heads and all that nonsense, it's going to look pretty. It's going to be fantastic. I'd love to be able to just drop it in and start it up first fire, but I know that's not going to happen. But it's always better to have somebody with you, because there were a couple of times where I'm like, this is really not the best situation to be in. And, but I managed to pull through, but I need to stop putting myself in those situations. And here you're going to see me fumble with the transmission mount. And there's always certain hiccups that you come across whenever it comes to universal kits. And one was the hardware was not exactly correct. Like they had the right thread for the isolator mount that they supply with the kit, but the bolt was too long. So it's one of those things that just didn't make 100% sense to me, but I was able to persevere after 6 trips to the hardware store. I look at the bolts for the old transmission cross member are almost exactly in line where this one's going. It's almost like this swap was made to be. No, not entirely. You can also see where, you can't see it, but I can see it. You can see where the seal on the old transmission was starting to wear out and slinging oil up here. Got some heat shielding I got to remove. But it was pretty decent. I got to get up underneath here and do some more cleaning and rust encapsulator black. All right, before I get too carried away and erase my fancy little doodles here, comment, subscribe, comment, subscribe, comment. Helps the algorithm out, helps the channel out, helps me out as a little guy try to get noticed, and potentially more people could learn something from my videos. Who knows? Anyway, let's find a rag to erase that with. It'll work. Bright clean as dry erase cleaner. Seems to work. Dry side, kind of
dry that out. All right. So this morning, I'm going to go over something that I think is relevant. And honestly, if any professional or more experienced people watch this video and at least get this far in the video, please get this far in the video, and notice anything that I'm doing wrong or suggesting wrong or anything along those lines, please chime in, because I hate making mistakes, and one reason why it's taken me this long to even get this far is because I have a tendency to overthink things, and when I overthink, I tend to do things wrong. But I'm going to go over a few things that I have noticed, or one thing that may be of interest to somebody else. Let's get me. I ought to have a straight edge already out somewhere. Somewhere. I swear I just picked up all my tools yesterday and now they're all back out again. It don't matter. Let's use this one. So, in putting the motor and transmission in this truck, that in and of itself is not a hard thing to do. And just bear with me. I'm going to eyeball this. For the intents of this demonstration, assume those lines are truly parallel. So, you got, I could have measured actually a distance between the two of them, and we'll go. And CL. Okay. In a perfect world, it almost looks like a road. In a perfect world type situation, you would drop the motor and transmission in, put it directly center line, and the crankshaft, transmission, everything runs down this little line right here. In a perfect world. One thing I noticed on this truck in pulling measurements the other day and measuring up the rear end, measuring up the third member that's going to go in for the 9-inch, and even the 8.8 that's in there right now, there, let's do some, just because this is the way my mind works, that's the front, this is the rear. Right now you have a giant rear end right through there. That's just simulating the rear axle. You would think that everything would be centered, but it is not. It is actually a different color. The pinion gear, or your yoke, where the, trying to find the right terminology so that way somebody doesn't get mad at me. I'm going to keep referring to it as the pinion. Your pinion yoke coming out of your third member, or in this case out of the out of the rear end itself, is offset to the passenger side And this is not truly to scale. The only thing that's kind of scaled is the center line itself. Your yoke comes out offset of your center line. If you were to put your motor and transmission in, that's a horrible drawing. I cannot draw to save my life. Engine, transmission, tail shaft, going straight down the center. If you were to do that, your drive shaft will now be kicked at an odd angle. Which I'm not going to say it's acceptable. It can be done because you have a universal joint front and rear, which does allow for misalignment issues. But you're going to replace those U-joints out all the freaking time. They're going to wear out because of the extreme loads that are on them. So what we're going to do, or what I was doing yesterday, and then got distracted and had to do other things in town, is what we're going to do is we're going to shift the motor and transmission. What did I do in my rag? There it is. I'm going to shift the motor and transmission to where the crankshaft center line tail housing all line up with the rear end yoke, so that way I have a straight shot with my drive shaft. Makes sense to me anyway. But it keeps your torsional load on your U-joints down. It helps keep everything in balance. There's probably, besides the rear end being offset, there's probably another reason why Ford did it this way. Who knows? Maybe it was just a Tuesday afternoon when the engineers designed this and they didn't care. They were ready to get out of the office. Who knows? But that is what makes sense to me. And keeping everything straight in line, it'll keep things balanced. You ain't got to worry about extreme angles working against each other, uh, especially at the higher RPMs and whatnot that some of this engine probably ain't going to be a high RPM engine, but especially in high RPM applications, you want that as true as possible to minimize any type of vibration, because once you start getting imbalances in it, you're going to have vibration issues and yada, yada, yada. That's just the nature of rotating components. Trying to think if there's anything else I can learn you on this little infographic I drew up. And yeah, I think that about covers that. All right. So, in discussion of driveline, center line, and pinion center line, and things of that nature, I decided it best to reconfirm some measurements off the 9-inch. Got the housing there. Ooh, it's a cool little spider. Hey, buddy. Uh, Decided to do some reconfirming. Yeah, that was the word I was looking for. Reconfirming some measurements, because even though the 8.8 is in the truck right now, I think the measurements are kind of close. But I'm going to pull measurements off the actual housing and third member I'm going to use just to verify uh, the correct offset. Because even right now, the spring purchase, tube lengths, and everything are the same as the 8.8. The only thing I just got to verify is the third member offset, which in a standard application, I believe Ford 9-inch is only 15/16, uh, 15/16 of an inch. But we're going to pull measurements just to verify, because this is an aftermarket third member. It's not as strange. That's just a strange box. So, liquid. So, let's spin this around. Yep, I did put it in there backwards. There we go. Even though I don't have the studs pressed into this thing, I should be able to get the holes lined up pretty darn center. I got a couple of alignment tools I should be able to use. That one's actually too small. There's one there. There's one here. It's a good thing working in different trades. You collect a lot of different tools that come in handy that you normally wouldn't think of. All right. That looks like all my holes are pretty much centered. So what I can do is start pulling some measurements.
All right, for starters, ignore that 15/16 measurement I threw out there. That's for a completely different offset measurement. There was a lot of doubt that creeped up in my mind, and that's one reason why I had to take a pause and start pulling measurements again, because sometimes you just have to double check your work. Again, this may be just the overthinker in me, but for the most part, what I found out while measuring this and doing a little bit more reading on a couple of drag racing uh, articles and whatnot is basically the offset I'm looking for is 2.5 inches. And that's in between the frame rails. Just shift everything over 2.5 inches will put you dead nut center of your yoke. But again, I got a little bit more research and measurements to do, but for the most part, that's what it's looking like.
But yeah, so far that is the progress of the truck. I did get the motor and transmission swung in, which kind of matches to what my initial goal was to, let's just go ahead and turn this light back on. My latest video, engine and transmission fit up, question mark. We kind of got there. I mean, we got some more piddly measurements to do, but for the most part, I think that's done. And I guess I'll bring you back whenever it's time to actually start welding the cross members and then pulling the motor back out. Anyway, see you next time.